because typically I can run it from my iPad, but tonight I can't. So I was running it from there. So I'm just glad I remember how to run it. So to the digital church, good evening. Thank you for joining us. To the in-person church, good evening. Thanks for joining us. And anybody going to go look for Northern Lights when we leave here? They're supposed to be most active between 8:30 and midnight tonight. Is there anyone here that didn't go look last night? Does anyone here not have any idea of what I'm talking about? You can see North. Are you serious? Okay, I'm sorry. Stitch, that sounded so judgmental. No, there has been significant solar flares that last night you could see red Northern Lights in Caddo. Yeah, so when you're going home, when you get someplace that's nice and dark, you may be able to see it with the naked eye, but if you will take your iPhone or your phone and use it tonight, night vision, you'll see it better. But my bride goes, we went all the way to Alaska to see them, and we didn't see them. And now we're standing outside our house in Caddo. So anyway, God's got a sense of humor. Well, it is good to see you guys. Thank you for being here tonight. And it has been a very busy week here at the Little ALF, but that's the way I like it. It helps to keep me out of trouble. But looking forward to the next couple of weeks, very busy. The Blessings Box, those of you that are participating are doing such a great job. I see people coming and just blessing that box. And I don't believe I think our government's on the way to figuring it out, but we're not there yet. So there are those in need. And then our water fountain, our hydration stations, what I'm calling it, because I like that, is not fully functional yet, but it is close, and it's pretty exciting. So we'll be letting you know about that as well. Well, this week we had our middle sermon in the three-part on grace, gratitude, and generosity. And so this week we looked at the passage found in Luke 17, verses 11 through 19. I want to read that to us just so we make sure we understand our context real quick. It's short. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus was traveling along the border between Samaria and Galilee. And as he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out with a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. Verse 15, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God with a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one else returned to give praise to God except the foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Arise and go, your faith has made you well." So Sunday we kind of expanded the context that there were 9 Jews and 1 Samaritan. And one of the things we talked about was the fact that as a Samaritan, you were an outcast to the other Jews. As a Samaritan, you should have been an outcast to Jesus. But the great thing is, to Jesus, there are no outcasts. And so these 10 men were outside of society. They were outside of culture. They were outside of their place of worship because they had leprosy. And there's about 600,000 cases a year diagnosed in the world, and about 80,000 a year die from that disease. And I believe it is 100% curable given right circumstances. But in Jesus' day, it was 100% terminal. And so these men had contracted this disease, not because of their sin, but because of their proximity to what it takes to capture it. Also, the culture did not understand that it cannot be transmitted through touch. They didn't have the technology at the time. But these men were required by law to stand at a distance, to look terrible, uncut hair, unkept clothes, have their face covered, and to cry out unclean to everyone that they saw, in an effort to keep what they thought might be cross-contamination. And in the Hebrew culture, they would have been considered unclean even being in their presence as far as worship and sacrifice. But that's a whole different thing. But these men were out, and they see Jesus. And one day, I hope we get the extended library in heaven. Because God doesn't tell us how these 10 men saw Jesus and called out to him as who he was. And I'm going to give you something extra here too. Jesus says go to the priest, but he doesn't say which ones. Because the 9 would have gone to Jerusalem, but the 10th one wouldn't have gone to Jerusalem by default. So it's a different thought. So anywho, but one of the things that I mentioned on Sunday is this. In our world, we divide ourselves by so many things. Some really big things and some really small things. But we seem to be really good at division today. Well, one of the things that will bring us together, addition, is suffering. These 10 men were not together because of their religious faith. They were not together because of their cultural faith. They were not together because of their religious practices. They were together because of their suffering. And they had come together to live together, to strive together, to hopefully try to encourage one another. But it's an amazing thing. We see these men came together not under the umbrella of all the really good things, but under one of the hardest umbrellas in life, suffering. Isn't it amazing how suffering will begin to break down a lot of things? What are some of the things in life that suffering will break down in the life of a person or a group of people? Hope. Peanut butter or just plain chocolate? Nada? Nothing. All right, I'm going to go back here because he didn't get dark chocolate last week. And you're related, so it's kind of in the family. Hope, sure, what else? Have you ever seen someone rely on someone they wouldn't necessarily rely on? Yeah. Has there ever been someone who called someone and they go, oh my God, I heard you were sick? Yeah. One of the greatest relationships in my life was restored because I had heard the individual had been in a significant automobile accident. And I simply reached out and I said, hey, I heard the Lord sustained your life, and I want to praise him for that. And if you'd ever like to get together, I'm down. And we did. Before then, no calls were being accepted from the gym bro. But God used the trial, the tribulation, and the struggle. So we see that these men were in a place in their life, and their suffering had separated them. The leprosy had separated them physically from their family and their friends, from their jobs. It had separated them socially. It had also separated them spiritually. They couldn't go to the temple to worship. These men were called out, separated from the Lord. They shared a suffering, but in that suffering, it brought them together. And one of the things that brings us together is our suffering and our sin. Yes, it is the Lord that brings us together, but it's the recognition and the need of our sin that turns our eyes to the Lord. And in turning our eyes to the Lord, then we come together. That's why, inside the capital C church, we really should be more about addition than subtraction. And so secondly, we see that Jesus gave them a command. This is so good. They called out to Jesus. Jesus heard their cry. And his response to them was, go. Show yourselves. Go. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of like action and then response, right? Is there anything more frustrating than going to the doctor and they go, oh, hey, it's good to see you. We ran some tests. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Jeff, you love that, right? Isn't it great? No. I came to see you and I paid up front. Right? I don't get in till I pay, but you tell me that I have to wait, wait a minute, right? Jesus heard their cries, knew their need, responded to it, and he says, go and show yourselves. Jesus didn't pray over them. He didn't touch them. He didn't rub mud in their eyes as he would with some man. He said, go. Do you think those 10 had any moment of pause about that command? What, what are some of the things those guys could have been thinking in that moment? It's kind of a ridiculous request right off the cuff, isn't it? We have leprosy. We see it. We have leprosy. You see it. The people you're sending us to know we have leprosy. You know, we're standing in the same affliction we've met, and now you tell us to go and to show ourselves to the very people that declared us unclean. Yeah. Oh, you're just passing the buck? Yeah. How about that? You know, call me back in a couple of weeks. Yeah. How about this one? Well, I thought maybe he would care more. Yeah. How about this one? Well, maybe he just can't do anything. Right? I mean, Jesus had a reputation. Word got around even without X and Twitter and all those things. Well, maybe he can't do anything. Or how about this? Well, what if we go and they still reject us? You see, what's interesting in here is that Jesus had the power to what? Completely heal at a word. Well, God created everything in a word. So this leprosy thing's not a thing. He could do that, but Jesus didn't do that. He said, I see you, I hear you, I have compassion for you, now go. And in this moment, they have to decide. Because in going, where else could they have gone? Have you ever avoided by intentional misdirection? Have you ever, well, I need to go here, but I want to go this way. Think of all the places these men could have gone. They could have gone, oh, never mind, and they just go back to the lepers' camp. They could have gotten mad and rushed Jesus. I mean, you know. These men had to decide. Whatever faith it was that had them to call out to Jesus, now they had to ask themselves, am I willing to do what Jesus says? While they're looking at their leprosy. You see, sometimes God says go and then he'll move. But I can confess from my own heart, there are times when I fail him and I go, God, let me see you move, and then I'll get going. And I am reminded in my own life that delayed obedience is disobedience. If you've ever had a child in your life. So these men had to decide. Now, it's an interesting one, and I'll let you debate it on the way home. Had they not gone, would God have still healed them? I'll leave that with you. But the Bible says they went, and as they went, what happened? God's word, God's promise, God's command, God's power, God's passion, God's began to be manifested in them. And somewhere between Jesus and a long way off, because for the Jews to get to the priest, they would have had to gone all the way up the mountain to Jerusalem. That's a long way from where they were. Somewhere in the transit. Maybe everyone. Yeah. It's like Hollywood special effects before they were. Can you imagine someone looks around and they go, hey, what? You know. And so these men had been commanded of the Lord to do something that took a great deal of faith. He commanded them first, and healing came in the obedience and not before it. Faith is often walking before you see the results. Do you remember the day you got saved? Do you remember the place, the circumstances of it? And in that moment of faith, whether you were 2 or 22 or 32 or wherever it was, in that moment of faith, every bit of faith and biblical knowledge and spiritual conviction rushed into you in that moment. just downloaded off some really hot Wi-Fi, and you were complete in your faith. I don't know about you, but the day I got saved, all I believed in was Jesus. And I didn't have a real hard, firm grip on that. But God began the process. And to my excitement and frustration, I'm still in process. Do you ever find yourself going, Lord, one of these days when I grow up? Well, these men had been heard and commanded, and in their obedience, God did what God does. The 10 were walking, the 10 were healed. The other 9, our assumption, which we have to be careful, our assumption is the men went all the way to the temple to get declared clean because the priests are the only one that could do it. You don't get back in until they declare you clean. So for them, if they're going to be ceremonially clean, they got to go a long way. We assume they did that. But let me just say this. Sometimes we get distracted on the way to do what we should do. I'm not saying they didn't get there. I'm just saying it's a long road to Tipperary. And I can't, by faith, I'll accept it, but as a man, that's a long way. And I'm just saying, as a man, if I look at myself and my Lord, I am clean, and the other 9 are clean, I just might want to go home before I go to Jerusalem. I'm just saying. And so, but the 10th guy, the outcast, the black sheep, the only one that was welcomed into the group because of the suffering, the Samaritan, the Samaritan turns around, comes back. The difference wasn't in what they received. Same blessing, same promise, same power, same person. Look at me, ripping those off just like I'm making them up. The difference wasn't what they received, but how they responded. Response is so important, isn't it? Gratitude sounds so easy, but it's one of the hardest things to live out consistently, isn't it? Took a little personal time yesterday and decided, you know what, I'm going to go see a movie. Now, it wasn't that big a thing because my bride wouldn't have wanted to see this movie anyway, so I wasn't leaving her out. I was doing her a favor, actually, because I'm that guy. No, Nuremberg. So I go to see the film, and I have popcorn that I don't have to share. I have a beverage. I don't have to share it either. But because I love my bride, I bought a package of Twizzlers and had a couple and took the rest home to her because, you know. And on the way over there, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes there's traffic on I-30. Oh, do you too? Oh, okay. Well, I found myself getting, and I remind myself, well, the movie starts at 3:30, but we know it's not going to start for 20 minutes afterward. And I could feel it. I could just feel it because my day had kind of been just a little awkward, just a little, and it kind of, and I remember so distinctly, I sat there and I said, Lord, I didn't let go of the wheel. I said, Lord, I have today, I have a car, I'm going to the movie. Lord, I'm not going to go there over this. I'm not going to do it. Lord, I am thankful. I'm thankful. So as amazing as this is, the challenge that we face is Not that we don't receive the same blessings, because we do. Every person that woke up this morning received the exact same blessing of God. It's called air in life. We could just start there. But it's how we respond to it that really makes the difference. Gratitude isn't just acknowledgement of a gift, but it deepens our relationship with the giver. The greater our gratitude for something, the deeper our relationship with the provider of said gift becomes. How do you know that? Do you have something of your mothers, your fathers, your grandmothers, your grandfathers who are now baby with the Lord, and that little thing, whatever it is, means more to you than it ever did? Yeah, absolutely it does. When we return thanks to the Lord, we receive something more than healing. So these 10 men all got the same thing. They all had their leprosy healed. They all returned to their families. They all returned to their jobs. They all returned to their worship. They got back everything that they had lost because of the disease that had brought them into commonality. But only one of them came into relationship with Jesus because of the gratitude. Now, we are saved by grace through faith. Don't hear me saying. But what I'm saying is this, is when we experience grace, the natural response, at least one of, should be gratitude. What's some of the responses that we can experience when we taste grace? What's some of the responses that what is grace bubble up in you? Peace. I know what Ronnie gets. He gets plain chocolate. Somebody else? Peace? Humbleness? Right, yeah. Humility? I know me. I'm an expert on me. Okay, anybody else? What else do we get? Love. All right, I remember. See, I don't want to be the guy that doesn't hand out candy. Love, impeccable love, not quantitative love. How much love? Forever love. How much love? 100% love. When? All the time. We don't understand. I don't know about you. You're all sanctified. I don't even love me 100% all the time. But God does. Yeah. Anybody else? What are some of the byproducts? What are some of the bubble ups? Purpose. Isn't it great to know that the Lord wants you to be a part of his plan? Your wonderful groom came to help us put in our hydration station. Right there, baby. Right there. And you know what? Either I missed buying a lottery ticket or God is providential, because the plumber was coming to campus to do something else when he discovered the leak in the front lawn. I'm going to tell you, that's one of the most on-time plumbers you'll ever have. He probably won't never come back. Oh, no. He says, no, he's all in. And I got here, and I said, brother, how providential is that? And so instead of having full focus back there, he had divided focus, but he conquered both. The opportunity to be a part of what God's doing. Wow, what a joy. So we find this, that grace, when it is received, I'm sorry, let me back up. Let me rephrase that. These gentlemen, grace is received when we call out. I don't know where you were, and I don't know what the circumstances were when you called out to the Lord in salvific faith. I was a bankrupt 20-something who, quite truthfully, kind of had his belly full of it. I don't know where you were, but wherever you were and whatever the circumstances were, when you called out, God's reply was grace. These men cried out from their desperate position of need, and Jesus cried back in grace. Grace is received when they are called out. Faith was revealed when they obeyed. You know, as a parent, nothing made me happier than when my kids actually did what I asked them to do. And as a parent, does it make you even more happy now that your grown-up kids do what they're supposed to do? It just thrills my soul. Because as a parent, I go, oh, Lord, I actually did teach them something. And hopefully modeled it for them. But faith is revealed when we obey. How do people know what we believe? It's by what we do. And by what we say, depending on the context. People believe what they see. Don't let someone tell you they love you and then put the back of their hand against your face. Don't. Those two don't work. Grace was received when they called out. Faith was revealed when they obeyed. And then lastly, gratitude was remembered when he came back. We have no record that the other 9 ever made any sort of contact with Jesus. Now, I'm not saying they didn't because I don't have biblical context, so I would be wrong of me. But God didn't choose to record it. And I think one of the challenges that we all, myself included, need to make sure that we keep front of mind is this, is that we never become so accustomed to grace that we become too accustomed to grace. I've used it before, but I thought of it just Sunday. I went, because I knew I was going to go to the movie, Lord willing. And I went by the gas station to fill my car up. You know, got to have that getaway juice. So I went by and I filled up my car. And I got in my car and I said out loud, Lord, thank you for a full tank of gas. Because I remember.
Not just $3.
I remember. I'm thankful for the days of $3, but I'm sure thankful today that I'm blessed that I can go and just fill my car up and I don't have to think about it for, whatever miles. And whatever, every time, what's funny, Jeff, because, ministry, it's always convenient. Every time I fill my car up, I'm thinking, okay, Lord, what are we going to do with this? Because, we're growing. The world is desperate for what these men were looking for. Not just a physical healing, because physical healing is temporal. These things wear out. But an eternal healing. A grace that the world can't produce. A grace that the world can't understand. A grace that provides passion and purpose and acceptance and love and all those things. And faith. I talked to those young ladies last week in our Rafa baby shower, and I asked them, I said, how many of you guys use Apple Pay? Well, everyone in there does, because they're all like 20-somethings. I said, so you all understand exactly how Apple Pay works? I said, no, you do not. You understand that you hold your phone to it and you go click, click, and there you go. I said, don't you? I said, don't tell me you don't have faith, because I'll respond to you. You have plenty of faith. It's just where we're putting it. The world has plenty of faith. They just can't or haven't put it where it really needs to be in Jesus. And then lastly, as believers, we need to be regularly reminded to be grateful. Because that gratitude, man, it just changes everything. It changes everything. And if you ever want to see some really base level gratitude, I want you to come up here on a Wednesday morning about 10 o'clock and watch them as they come through the line and get fresh, hot, baked food. It's simple. So All right. Well, let's not be like the other 9. All right, Digital Church, we love you guys. We'll see you soon.